One of my favorite songs from one of my favorite rappers of all time would have to be Big Krit, Outer Space. And if I were to draw a parallel to a book that I think really kind of speaks to the basis of the song Outer Space, I would have to say it would be Black Fatigue, How Racism Erodes the Mind, Body, and Spirit by Mary Frances Winters. And the reason why I draw that parallel is because in Black Fatigue, Mary Frances Winters talks about how, living in a racist society takes effect on us all in many different ways, even deeper than we imagine in the beginning. A lot of times we think of it as surface level, fear of seeing a police officer, fear of being pulled over by a police officer. And we look at kind of the physical aspects of the having to live in a society like that. And Black Fatigue speaks about how it affects us in every way possible, every way imaginable. We have the effects of trying to survive in a racist society. And in the song Outer Space, Big Krit speaks about the same basis. Even in the first verse, he talks about how all the stars and the planets, and he's worried about a cop killing him for pulling his car out of his own driveway. And he speaks, and that really speaks to how he could be doing so many more things with his life. As a society, we could be so much further advanced than we are now in the things that we can offer to humanity. We could be, like in the song, we could be studying different life forms. We could be traveling to outer space. We could be, finding other planets that we can inhabit. But we cannot, because we are so focused on having to survive day to day. We're having to focus on not being killed by a police officer, right? And so that first line really speaks about how, we don't want to be doing this every day. We don't want to have to strip ourselves of our creativity and our imagination because we're stuck in survival mode. We're having to worry about how we can get home every day instead of being able to just let our mind naturally kind of float and envision different things that we can then go attain, right? We can become astronauts. We can become time travel, space travel. We can do so many different things if we weren't so tied down with having to be in survival mode and living in an unjust society. And another line that he speaks about is how he did not want a telescope because he's like, what's the point of a telescope if we can never really go? And it's a small kind of simple line on the surface, but I think it's much deeper, where he talks about how, poverty and racism strips us of our hope and strips us of our imagination. So he's saying, like, what's the point of having a telescope and looking at another planet? What's the point of even taking that brain power and shifting it to that when I'll never be able to get there because I'm a black person living in the world, right? So there's no way that I'd be able to be an astronaut and go out into outer space. So there's no reason for me to even spend the time to look into a telescope, And that again speaks on Black Fatigue, how we are stripped of our aspirations. We're stripped of our hope a lot of times because we understand our reality. We understand that that we're living in a racist society. So a lot of times, you'll hear like children say how they want to be astronauts and they want to be a president and they want to be a doctor, a lawyer, anything like that. And then they'll hear an elder say, well, you can't do that because, these white folks ain't gonna let you do that. And that just really speaks to the grave sense of our reality, and how it kind of strips us of any optimism and replaces with pessimism that we think is just truth, right? And it can kill a child's imagination, and then at that same time can change their direction in life. You know what I mean? And it's really a detrimental thing that we have to go through. Like, we have to have the nerve to imagine our life being peaceful, right? We have to have the gumption to just even daydream about being able to be an astronaut or be a doctor, thing like that. That's a revolutionary thing to even imagine it, because we are living in this unjust society, And another line from the song, Big Krit talks about how instead of playing cops and robbers, maybe we should have been playing astronauts, because if we had, we would have been able to change our mentality of our life. And then we would have been able to focus on being an astronaut instead of being this proverbial good or bad in cops and robbers. And we could have been going to other planets. We could have discovered a way to go to Jupiter, to go to Mars. But instead, we're stuck here shooting pocket rockets at each other. You know what I mean? And to me, that speaks to how, again, we're stuck in this in this racist society. So we are attacking one another instead of working together to build a spaceship and go to Jupiter, go to Mars. Instead, we're kind of focused on this small theory of good and evil, right? And we're focused on just trying to take out evil and be good, or we're focused on trying to be aggressive towards one another instead of being able to just work together and try to be an astronaut, right? And that just speaks to the different effects that living in racism and colonialism has on us Black people, right? And so it comes out in different ways. It comes out in horizontal violence. It comes out in pessimism as well, because we're just trying to survive the best way that we know how. Not even the best way we know how, just survive, really. The only ways that we know how. And another line that really stands out to me in the song, as he says, "I'm just saying, what's the plan?" Right? We spent too many days in this traffic jam. We've been in here for 20 years, where he's speaking kind of metaphorically, but he's saying that, like, what's the idea here? Being in this unjust society has held us back for 20 years. We're in a traffic jam. You know what I mean? So what's the plan here? How do we get from here, from point A to point B? How do we as a people move from this current traffic jam to get to where we need to be, so that we can go to outer space and that we can go higher, go further than the bullshit that they told you to, right? So what's the plan, right? How can we do this? And another thing in the song that speaks to me is that he says, like, he doesn't really feel that he can have peace here on Earth. He feels like the only place as a Black person that he feels that he can breathe a breath of peace and he can know any kind of peace or solidarity or any kind of solace is in outer space. He says, "I'm just tired of the proverbial bullshit that I'm having to go through here on Earth. And I think the only way that I can have any kind of peace and any kind of tranquility is I have to go all the way to outer space." Right? And that speaks to the solidarity of Black people, that we are all under so much immense pressure anywhere you are on the planet, right? Even if you're from Mississippi, like David Banner, or like David Banner and Big Krit, you're from, born and raised in Mississippi, or you're all the way in Germany, or you're in France, UK, it doesn't matter, right? If you're here and you're Black, you're dealing with the stress of Black fatigue. So the only way that he feels he can have any kind of peace, he has to go all the way to outer space. You know what I mean? And that's something that we all can relate to, is like, how do we find that peace? It is something that we all struggle with. So the song Outer Space is, like I said, one of my favorite songs from one of my favorite rappers of all time, in Big Krit. And I think that the parallel can be found in the Black Fatigue book by Mary Frances Winters, which also, one of my favorite authors ever too. So I thought it was only right to kind of draw some of the comparisons and the similarities between the book and the song. Thank you.